gay youth, black gays, trans, white gay youth. They're getting beat up, but it's more often than not I see black gay males being targeted in these sorts of articles. And Tim Jefferson recently was just another one.
How is that?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, like, where are you getting the
Every
idea
time I
that
see
black gay males are more targeted?
I see it all the time
males.
in articles. I think it's happening more. Maybe it's more
I don't
attention
know
in the
about
media.
that.
I don't know. I really think so.
I mean, I stay pretty close to black gay issues, considering I'm a black gay, and I haven't necessarily heard anything that black gay men are more targeted than white gay men.
I feel like youth-wise, I feel like there's always youth that are being targeted, but when I read about it, it just
Well, I
seems
mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want anybody to go on the record saying that black gay males are targeted more than white gay males, because, I mean, just like the mainstream media reports on black crime disproportionately to white on white crime, that is, you got to consider that even when you're reporting on
yeah.
gay
So
issues.
maybe that's what I'm saying. It's like I see this reoccurring more. No, more media attention. No,
not for me.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't see a lot
not.
of media attention. I think if there was a lot of media attention on it, it would just.
But do you
I
think
think
they're
it
right
would fall
not to,
under the same-
not to counter it as a hate crime?
Oh no, I consider
way.
it a hate crime. Yes.
But why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they say it's a hate
I
crime?
don't know.
Like,
Well,
Because
really-
they want to protect these young men from jail,
And the
right?
teachers.
They
yes.
want to keep them out of jail forever, right? They don't want them to go to jail, and especially they don't want them to go to jail for the additional years that it takes to pay your penance to society for a hate crime.
And it was actually 2 of them. It was 2 gay males that were targeted
Yeah.
that day. And then what really gets me about this story is that people stood around and watched this, including educators, and didn't do anything. And
That's
I
insane.
understand that sometimes these days educators have such strict shackles as far as, like, you can't do anything or you'll get sued. You can't separate people or you get sued. But I'm sorry, as a human being, if I'm watching a kid get stabbed in the face with a screwdriver, if I'm watching anyone get stabbed in the face with a screwdriver, I'm going to stop it. I don't care if I get sued. I don't care if I get fired. That is not going to be even something going on in my mind right there. The only thing that would make it okay to not help is if you froze. And I get that sometimes people in shocking situations freeze. But other than that, there's no other reason that someone shouldn't have stepped in and stopped this from happening. So I really like, though, that the mom in this case is just suing freaking everybody.
I think she should.
She should.
She
She should get
sue
tons
everybody.
of money.
She should sue whoever made that damn screwdriver.
I hope someone reaches out and says, "Let me represent you."
Black and Decker,
I'm
going down.
hoping that someone does. I don't know if they already have or not, but that is it's a really, really disturbing case. It's a really disturbing case. And you know what also I'm noticing is that with more rights coming to gay people and the more our movement goes forward, there's going to be more backlash. And I've noticed that with a lot of, like, teens or even the kids that had, like, that anti-gay day in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
There's so many kids now that are kind of getting this, like being part of the backlash, and they learn that crap at home, like, or maybe through media, I don't know, but it's like, there just seems to be more of a backlash, and unfortunately, our LGBT youth are getting the brunt of it. I'm not going to say the brunt of it, but, like, they are, they're having to deal with it in schools. And
Youth
if
and trans women.
Right, and if educators can't step up and protect them, then, like, there's no hope. So we have to figure out a way to stop things like that. And I really, really hope all these people get prosecuted in this case.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we have for What's Hot, What's Not.
So now we're going to go on to some queer history.
I love this part of the show.
I am obsessed with history. I'm just going to go ahead and
Me
say...
too.
Why are you obsessed with history?
What?
Why?
Why am I obsessed with it? I think it's just so important to learn where we came from and to appreciate ourselves and celebrate ourselves. And especially when it comes to queer history, I'm passionate about creating it. I recognize that as I live and the things that I create for my community and the art I leave behind me contributes to history, and I'm just so excited to empower people to tell their own story and recognize those that did tell their own story that, maybe didn't get the attention that they needed because of the time, because, it happened years ago and people are always trying to suppress queer history. So I'm passionate about finding it and bringing it to the forefront.
That's amazing, and I'm excited. I love that anyone loves queer history, and just history in general. I think everyone has their own personal stories that make who they are, and I think the nation, the world is the same way. So what I want to talk about today is the Hays Code. It's also called the Motion Picture Production Code. Happened in the 1930s. Have you all ever heard about this, or have you seen the movie Celluloid Closet?
No.
No.
You heard about the Celluloid Closet?
No, I have not.
Oh, so many things to tell. So, some of our viewers might have heard about this or heard about the production code. Basically, before the 1930s, there were homosexuals in movies. There were women that were having babies out of wedlock. There were really strong female characters. There was adultery, and I'm not trying to put it all together, but especially
There were interesting things.
There were interesting characters actually on TV. Not on TV, but yeah, I guess a little bit. But in motion pictures. So basically, what happened is when it came to there was like this. It's called the pre-code cinema era, and it was a little bit raunchy. It was a little bit risque. We were coming out of war, so they wanted to make sure they entertained soldiers. But then also a really interesting thing, and it's funny like how it affects gay rights today and like gay media today. But the invention of sound in media. So when sound finally came to the motion picture, one, more racy things were able to be said on screen that maybe weren't before. But then sound also brought children to the big screen because children didn't really want to watch a silent film where they had to read. So suddenly children were now coming to movies.
Yeah, reading's dumb. Just kidding. I love reading. I love reading queer history.
So what happened with all of this is there was a backlash, and they basically said, we need to clean up cinema. We need to clean up the motion pictures. We need to clean up Hollywood, and we need to make a better image. There were also a couple of scandals and things that happened before that as well. So instead of just like finding a normal person to clean it up, they found the church. Right, exactly.
Puritanical.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, you hear little scratches.
King Tut is upset. King Tut is upset at the Hays Code.
The cat is upset. So, basically, another big thing that, speaking of the Supreme Court, another big thing that kind of made this happen is there was a case that said media isn't actually press. Media is for business, so it's a business, and it doesn't fall under free speech. And that started a bunch of backlash, Hollywood was afraid that the government was going to step in and start to censor them. So what they did is they created this Motion Picture Producers and Directors, the NPPDA. The president was this gentleman named William Hays, and he's actually the one that started the code. But it was written by these guys, Martin Quigley and Daniel Lord, and the code basically said there couldn't be you can't use the Lord's name in vain. There could be no homosexuals. Anyone who committed crimes in the movies had to be punished at the end of the movie for their crime. You couldn't say the word pregnant. You couldn't have a silhouette of a pregnant woman or someone giving childbirth. You couldn't have nudity or silhouette of nudity. If people were having a kiss on the bed, one person had to have the foot off the bed. Or like you see like Lucy and Desi that have the separate beds, you know. So all of that era, think about... And this happened until the 60s. So from the 30s to the late 60s, really all of your grandparents...
What about gays?
No, well that's the thing is you weren't allowed to show gays. So, and that brings me to the Celluloid Closet, which is amazing. So the Celluloid Closet, if you haven't watched it, it's an awesome documentary that goes back and it shows you all of the different movies during that segment of time during this this production code, and it shows you where there were supposed to be gay scenes. And how they changed it and how they had to take it out. I will say there were like 4 years, so it started in 1930. There were 4 years where Hollywood basically said, screw you, and just made whatever they wanted to. But then they started getting boycotted by this thing called the Legion of Decency. And the Legion of Decency, right, exactly, which is just another religious group that boycotted them.
They call themselves a legion. It's so pompous.
A Legion of Decency.
Legion of
thinking that they had the moral code so that they could, you know, make sure society grew up with good representations of media and they didn't have to see any, like, perversions of sexuality or anything. And then, so once that boycott started to happen, they started a whole new thing. I think it's the CPA, the PCA, so the Production Code Administration. This was headed by this guy named Joseph Breen, who was terrible. He was someone who was basically just went around and he censored everything, even if the code said like there were part of the code was don'ts and be carefuls. So some things you couldn't do, some things you just had to be careful in the way that you said it. So the Joseph Breen basically, even the Be Carefuls, he took out. So all the media that your grandparents grew up with and some of your parents was completely censored. It didn't have any representation of homosexuality. It didn't have like any representation of what was actually going on in the world in it. Also, he was a terrible, he was anti-Semitic. So he thought that Jews were controlling Hollywood, and he wanted to go clean it up and make sure that it was
he
like...
controlling Hollywood?
Exactly. Well, actually, I think it was like Liberty Magazine that quoted that said that he actually had more influence at one time on how people thought than Mussolini, Hitler, or Stalin. Because he basically just created this whole media. I mean, that's what people grew up watching. So, yeah, just all these things happened. It was, it just censored everything in media, which is insane. And if you think about it, too, you didn't have the internet. You really didn't have that much on TV, so people went to the movies. That's where they got everything. So for, 40 years, people couldn't see themselves represented. So where this actually started to fall apart just a little bit, there was actually, like, Howard Hughes started to put a lot of money. Actually, a big thing is that theaters, originally they were part of, like, Hollywood, and then they kind of went on to their own separate entities so they could start showing whatever they wanted. So Howard Hughes started to put a lot of money into movies that didn't follow the code, but he still put them into theaters, and they made huge money. They were box office hits. Also, foreign films didn't have to go under the code, so they started showing those. Again, they made tons of money. And then finally there was this movie called The Miracle, so it's called like The Miracle Decision. I think it even went to the Supreme Court, and it finally overturned, and it said, no, the miracle was art, and thus media should be part of free speech. Film should be part of free speech. And it took maybe like 10 more years for it to start to dismantle, but it's really interesting to see kind of where it started. I mean, something from as crazy as like sound to movies created this whole thing, and really like our whole entire, again, grandparents and parents' generation grew up without any sort of representation in the media. And then, of course, it's not like you can just say, okay, everything's good now, and just start making movies that, have homosexuality in it again, because this whole entire generation grew up with it. They didn't even know to put it back in. So, and we're really starting to still put it into media today. So the, motion picture production code, you can find tons of stuff online, and then definitely watch the Celluloid Closet, because it's just really funny to watch all these parts that there were supposed to be kisses, that there were supposed to be, like, I think it was Ben-Hur, like, Charlton Heston's sidekick, was basically told to treat it as a relationship, and Charlton Heston didn't even know that. So he just kind of, like, went through the movie thinking that they were just friends, and the other guy was, like, pretending it was a relationship, and it, like, has this really, like, interesting dynamic.
Really cool.
Yeah, so it's really, really interesting to see how much got censored and what movies probably would have been like. So that is your queer history for the day.
A friend of mine actually sent me, like, a Tumblr or whatever of all the euphemisms they used to denote who was a gay woman in movies, because they couldn't come out and
like
say
baby woman and all that.
Yeah, they'd be like, oh yeah, that woman, she lives alone, she wears pants, you know what I mean?
Yes,
They'd be like,
exactly.
she fixes her own bike tires.
She like,
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
There's one where a woman is like, watch out for her, she likes to wrestle.
Oh, yeah. I think this is one was like, watch out for her, she does her own taxes.
That's amazing. So go back and watch these old films, because they're so funny, especially from the 1930s to, like, the 1960s, because they have all kinds of stuff.
You won't catch that one in a skirt.
She lives alone.
Yeah. Hi, guys, it's Chelsea. Are you ready for events? I'm ready for events. You know what I love about the summer? Pride season.
Woo!
I love Pride season so much. So here are some lists. I'm going to give you some upcoming Prides, and I hope you guys hop on the gay train and go to some of them. June 6th is Gay Days in Orlando. June 13th and 14th, that's Los Angeles, D.C., Philadelphia, and Northwestern Pride in Portland. Whew. If you can make it to all four of those, God bless. June 20th, that's Chicago Pride. June 27th and 28th, that's New York. Most people will be there. Houston's Pride, San Francisco's, and St. Louis. Those are all June 27th and 28th. And if you live in the South, most likely your Pride is in October, and I'll see you there.
Yeah, we're not leaving you out if you live in the South. We're not trying to forget our Atlanta Pride and things like
Pride
that.
365. Love it.
Amen.
And if you've never been to a Pride, well, if you've been to a Pride, you're going to go anyway. If you've never been to a Pride, travel to one. We try to, again, we've got St. Louis and East Coast, West Coast. We try to put it everywhere.
And there are new prides popping up all over the place, too.
There are. But I remember the first time I went to a Pride, and I walked, and there was the parade. I almost cried. because it was just like seeing this mass amount of people that are all there, that are like you or supporting you, and you see all those flags.